Welcome to the Entrepreneur Master Series. Today is April the 5th, 2023. I am the real Jason Duncan, and I want to thank you for joining me live. This is a bi-weekly live masterclass that I host with some of the world's top experts in matters that are important to you as an entrepreneur. So today, I'll be talking about how to get a standing ovation at your next TED Talk or whatever talk that you happen to be giving. And I'll tell a little bit about that in just a minute. But before we get into it, I just want to say thank you. Thank you for joining in today. We're doing a live stream. Not only is this on Zoom, for those of you joining on Zoom, hello, thanks for being here. We're also on YouTube at the youtube.com/the real Jason Duncan. We are live on my YouTube channel. Hey, everybody on YouTube. And then we're on LinkedIn at the real Jason Duncan. And thank you guys on LinkedIn for being here. We're on Twitter. I don't think anybody follows me on Twitter, so I don't think anybody ever watches on Twitter, but we're there. We're there. And then we're also on Facebook. So hello, folks that are logging in on Facebook Live. So we're live streaming in all these. And big thanks to Desk Rig, the company behind putting all this production together and doing everything. Garen Parkins is the guy behind the scenes making all this happen. If you ever need anybody to help produce your show, make sure you reach out to deskrig.com because Garen does a great job. But this right here today, the EMS is about you. We're going to see how you can get on stage and get a standing ovation. So there's a couple things we're going to talk about, but I want to get into this in just a minute. Just to let you know, this episode of EMS these are released as special episodes of my podcast, The Root of All Success. So if you ever want to go back and listen to these, you can get the replay because you registered. So you get that. But you can also go and listen to these on The Root of All Success. I've got actually an EMS episode is dropping, I think next week. That I recorded a couple of weeks ago that'll be on my podcast. You can go to The Root of All Success to learn more about that. So our topic today is 5 tips to get a standing ovation at a TED Talk or whatever talk you happen to be giving next. Have you ever watched a TED Talk and you've watched somebody just really do a fantastic job with it, and at the end, the audience is so captivated that they stand to their feet and they just clap it up and everybody's yelling and screaming. It's just fantastic. Have you ever saw that and thought, man, I want to know how to do that. I want to be able to give that kind of speech. Well, today, what we're going to do is talk about the tips that can get you there. Now, this is a money back guarantee. You're going to get a standing ovation. Your next talker, you get double your money back for attending this. And since you didn't pay anything, you know how that works. But in 90 minutes today or less, you're going to discover the secrets of delivering a winning stage talk that will elevate your brand. It'll set you apart from the crowd. You're going to learn the mental game of speaking and how to win your audience over. And not just win them over, but win them over in the first couple of minutes that you start talking. You're going to discover how speaking is like live text messaging and how you can leverage the most important part of your speech to make a lasting impact on the people that are listening. Now, whether you're an experienced speaker, I know a lot of TED Talkers are here today because I'm going to be on stage at TEDx Wilmington in just a few weeks, and I'm invited. All the other guest speakers are going to be there at the TED Talk, and I know a lot of TED Talkers are here today. So whether you're experienced TED Talker, experienced speaker, or you're just starting out, this webinar is for you today. Mike Pacchione is our guest speaker. He's helped countless speakers achieve success, and now he's ready to share his expertise with you. So let me tell you a little bit about Mike. So Mike is an international speaker. He's a speech coach who specializes in helping coaches, athletes, and entrepreneurs deliver smart, engaging messages to audiences of all sizes. It doesn't matter what size audience you're speaking from. He's trained more than 10,000 employees from companies like Nike, Microsoft, and Slack. And many of Mike's clients are industry leaders with 7-figure businesses, best-selling books, and thousands of followers. And that includes clients like U.S. Olympic gold medalist Scott Hamilton, New York Times bestselling author James Clear, and popular online entrepreneurs Pat Flynn, who is a recent guest on my podcast, by the way. Love that guy. And Amy Porterfield. Mike's work has been featured in Entrepreneur and Toastmasters magazines. He's been on podcasts such as the Smart Passive Income podcast, Building a Story Brand, and the Speaker Lab. He's also spoken at conferences like South by Southwest, Think Better, Live Better, and Josh Shipp's Rock the Stage, and the Northwest Communication Association. And I've already said his last name, but his kind of little joke is he'll give you $1 if you can pronounce his last name correctly. But Mike Pacchione, welcome to the Entrepreneur Masters Series, my man.
Jason, it's a pleasure. Nobody says my name right, so. Yeah.
Well, it was easy for me because you spoke at an event, a mastermind event that I'm a part of a few months ago, and they introduced you and they said your name right, so I didn't have to guess. So I was able to say it right the first time. But you're joining us from the city of brotherly love, Philadelphia, PA. Welcome. How's the weather there in Philly today?
Man, we did not get the cold that I wanted this year. So it's like beautiful spring. I don't know. Maybe this says something about my attitude towards things, but I'm nervous about how hot it'll be
Well,
later. But
it's
for now, it's great.
Well, it's in Nashville. It's 86 today. It's been beautiful, but right now a huge severe thunderstorm is blowing in. I think it's going to be in the 50s tomorrow and the next day. So we're on the edge of that changing weather. But I'm really glad you're here. You did a fantastic job with your talk at the Forward Conference just a couple of months ago. And so much so that, as you remember, I went up to you afterwards and said, hey, man, you need to come be on my show because I've got a lot of people that are going to be on the stage at TEDx Wilmington that would love to hear what you've got to say about how to deliver a really good speech. So I'm excited about this. I do want to say this to everybody, no matter where you are listening to this right now, if you want to engage in this and ask questions of Mike or me as we go through this, you can do that in a simple way. So here's what you're going to do. If you're in Zoom, you're going to use the Q&A bubble at the bottom of your screen. So if you're in Zoom right now and there's a Q&A bubble at the bottom, you click that. You can ask a question right there. Garen, our producer, will be able to grab that and put that in the screen where Mike and I can see it. We can answer live. If you're on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, or LinkedIn, just in the chat right below the live video, just where it says chat, type a message. You just type your message there. And Garen is he's got 4 eyeballs and he's trying to monitor all 4 eyeballs. No, he doesn't really, but he's trying to monitor all of that, and he'll find your question and he'll pop it in here where we can see it in our production studio and we can answer your question. And really, these webinars are so much better if you get involved and ask those questions. I know Mike is open to that. He would love to have you be a part of that. The other thing that he's provided for us today that no other guest speaker has provided is there is a Google Doc that I'm going to drop into the chat right now, and then Garen can repost it or repaste it wherever it needs to go so that everybody can see this. So there it is. I think I did that right. So Garen, do you see that link that I just dropped in there? Did that work? Because it's not showing up on my side. Yeah, he sees it. Okay. So there's a Google Doc that all of you online right now watching this can have access to, and you can take live notes together inside that Google Doc. Plus, it has his freebies that he's offering you and some relevant links for him. So go to that Google Doc. We'll drop it in the chat windows or something. Garen will make it available so that all you got to do is click on it, because nobody's going to have to. He's not going to be able to read that off. Nobody's ever going to be able to retype that. So he'll drop it in the chat windows and all the platforms so you can do that. So Mike, are you ready to begin and tell us how these 5 secrets will work to get us a standing ovation?
I think we can do it, Jason.
All right, man. Well, I will let you take it from here, and make sure to ask your questions, everybody, so Mike and I can answer them. But Mike, so what is the purpose of a standing ovation? I know you're going to get into that, but I think you got a story you want to tell before we get into it.
Yeah, let me start here. Because of what I do for a job, people tend to think that I have like nerves of steel, that nothing throws me off. And that is actually not true. I deal with my anxiety through having a consistent plan. So I wanted to tell you a story right now of when I deviated from that plan. I've stayed at a lot of hotels in my life. I'm a nervous person. When I travel, my way of coping with it is to always do things the same. And for some reason, this one time, I did not do that. So this story takes place at the Courtyard by Marriott at Yale University in New Haven, Connecticut. For some reason, when I pulled into the Courtyard, I did something I've never done before or since, and especially since, which is this. You know, you've all stayed at hotels before. Hotels, they've got the lobby, and right in front of the lobby is that stupid 5-minute unloading area that I think is, I don't understand why anybody would park there. I mean, maybe if you have kids, but like when you're traveling by yourself, why would anybody park there? Never before or since had I parked there, but I did that night. And because I parked there that night, I found myself walking back and forth through the lobby 4 different times. And because I walked back and forth through the lobby 4 different times, I made weird eye contact with this one guy And because of that timing, that same guy is on my elevator. I get on the third floor, or I get off at the third floor. He gets off at the third floor. I make a left. He makes a left. Like, do you know how weird this is? Do you know how weird it is when even having someone on the elevator going to the same floor as you is unlikely. Me making left, him making left, also unlikely. Walking the same speed, same direction, same speed. He's like right behind me. It's like a foot behind me. And just as I'm thinking to myself, wondering, is this guy going to jump me? He stops halfway down the hall, and I get to continue down the hall to my room 326. That number will matter in just a minute. But for the moment, okay, we're all good. Ready. Talk to my wife. Big day tomorrow. Go to bed. And if that were the end of the story, this wouldn't be a very good story, would it? Middle of the night, phone rings. I just hear breathing. I answer it. I just hear breathing. And if I had just hung up the phone, none of the rest of what you're about to hear would have happened. But for some reason, because I'm Mike and I'm an Enneagram 9 and I want to be like friendly to people, I'm like, oh, it's like 2 a.m. I'm like, what room are you trying to call? And the guy goes, 329. I'm like, well, I'm in 326. And he says, I'm right next door. Ah! Suddenly I'm awake. I remember that guy, the creepy guy in the hallway, the guy who'd taken the elevator with me, the guy who got off the third floor, left. Oh my gosh, it's him. I hang up, call the front desk. They're like, okay, man, like it's probably a prank call. I hang up. I'm sitting there thinking to myself, like, all right, well, it'd be a pain to get all my stuff and move rooms now. Do I want to do this? It's probably just a prank. And then just as I'm wondering if I should switch rooms, phone rings again. And I promise this is what happened when I answered the phone. Y'all, public speaking is often called number one fear. Whoever said that has never stayed at the Courtyard Marriott in New Haven, Connecticut. I love talking about public speaking. It is my favorite thing. I always try to tell people the goal, whether it's at TED, wherever you might be speaking, the greatest gift you can give your audience, forget about your standing ovation for a minute. The greatest gift you can give your audience is to be fully present with them. The greatest gift you can give your audience is to be fully present with them. But easier to say than to do. Now, Jason mentioned this before. I'm always a little proud of my name dropping. I've worked with some big names, but sometimes there's like a little bit of a misperception about that. One of the reasons why these people became as famous as they are, or at least part of the reason, is because they're good at speaking. And I know at least some of you on this call have a speaking background. You can agree with me, or you'll probably agree with me on this. Like speaking, if you do it well, it helps your confidence, helps your branding, and it helps your bank account. One of my friends in the speaking world is this guy, Shane Sams. Jason, this would be a good interview for you, Shane Sams.
Yeah, I'd love to talk to him.
I'm guessing nobody on this call knows who he is. Usually when I ask about him at live events, I'm like, okay, raise your hand if you know who Tim Tebow is. Everybody raises their hand. Raise your hand if you know Duck Dynasty. Everybody raises their hand. Raise your hand if you know Shane Sams. Not a soul raises their hand. Shane speaks on the same stages as them. So, when I was growing up, I thought motivational speaker, the only way you could be that is like you fended off a shark or something and you no longer have one of your arms. Shane is a totally normal dude, former teacher from Kentucky. These are the crowds he speaks at. Yeah, same stages as Tebow, Duck Dynasty. He follows Tebow. I asked him, I'm like, Shane, what's been the net effect of you that you started speaking? Here's what he said. He said, when I decided to start speaking, it changed everything. It grew every part of our business, tripled our email list, doubled our podcast downloads. And this is the big one. He said, it'll 7 or 8x our revenue. Woo. Now, some of you care about that. Some of you are like, yeah, Mike, I don't really care about revenue so much. TED is the thing. Jason promised me a standing ovation at TED.
That's right.
Y'all, I want y'all to think of something. Let's talk standing ovations for a minute. So just question for you. When was the last time you gave someone a standing ovation? Think about that for a second. Jason, you got an answer here? Can you remember the last time you gave a standing O?
It was at least one of the talks at that Forward conference, I do believe. And I don't remember which one it would have been because whatever the last one was, I guess. I don't know.
I remember there was a guy that got a standing O. I was in the back of the room. It was what was his name? Edwin McManus, I think was his name.
Erwin McManus, yes.
Erwin McManus, yeah.
Yes.
I was really interested that he got a standing O because for what the speaking lineup was, I felt like he was a little bit out of place. You know, like we've got like these marketing people, and even me. I mean, I like to think I'm pretty wholesome, but there is like a pretty clear ROI to what I'm telling people about. Erwin McManus, big standing O. Jason, because I can only talk to you. Why do you think people give a standing O? I feel like there are two answers. Maybe you can think of a third, but I think there are only two real reasons.
Well, I do have an opinion on that, but I want to, if I might, I'm going to interject something here before I answer your question. Yeah. Your story at the beginning was so great. I remember it. I remember it vividly from when you told it live, and you just told it again. But your slides, Garen is telling us, weren't on the screen when you gave the punchline for what happened on that second phone call. And you didn't read it. And I knew what you were supposed to say. That's why I was like, Garen, where's the slides at? And he's monitoring the chat. So we had a technical glitch there that the slide didn't show up. So everybody's wanting to know when that phone rang the second time and you picked up the phone, what did the guy say? Because everybody.
Yeah, let me get back in character. So reminder, just called 12 seconds before, breathing on the other end. Tells me he's in 329. I'm in 326. I check the lights. Nobody there. Kind of expected there to be like the little footprints underneath the door or something. There's nobody there. Calls right back, and he says, "Are you sure you want to go to bed? Are you sure you want to go to bed?"
Oh. So creepy dude at the Courtyard Marriott, wherever. What city was that in? Yale? You were at Yale?
New Haven, Connecticut. New Haven, Connecticut.
Yeah. So creepy dude. If you're out there watching this EMS, you just need to go away. Nobody wants you, man. We're not interested. All right. So now let's get back to your question. So your question was, why do people give standing ovation? I think that I'm going to be honest. The reason I stand up and clap for people most of the time is because everybody else is, and I feel like, well, I'm going to be an idiot or I'll be a jerk if I don't stand up. But I think when I'm really truly motivated to go wow and stand up, it's because I was wowed. It's because I was like moved or thought it was really good or the story had a certain meaning to me. So that's what I think.
Yeah, I agree. And by the way, I'm the same way. I'm always a little reluctant. Like I'm a reluctant stander. I'm like, fine. I agree with you. I think there are two reasons people give a standing O. One is the one that you mentioned. So we were wowed by that. The other, I think, is almost like a lifetime achievement award, like Bono just talked or something like that. So I'm not necessarily applauding the talk as much as the man or woman who gave it. But for us regular people, or reasonably regular people on the call, I think it's we're wowed. So let me say this differently. People give standing ovations because you connected with them on an emotional level. And what most people try to do when they present, they try to wow you with facts and figures. Nobody ever got a standing ovation because they showed you this thrilling line of code or like this great email subject line. I mean, that's useful information for your audience, maybe. That's not what gives you a standing O. So I'm going to roll through 5 tips for getting a standing O, or 5 things that will help you get a standing O. Here's a hint. They are all going to be connected to emotion. The point of a speech is to make an emotional connection to the audience. And to be clear, like when I say emotion, I know, Jason, when I'm saying emotion, like are you picturing someone crying?
No, not necessarily. It could be happy. It could be laughter. It could be sorrow. It could be any of those emotions.
Yeah, that's. I'm glad you said that because I think a lot of times when I say you need to make an emotional connection, it sounds like you need to make the audience cry. That is one possible emotion, and I guess that's often how we use things colloquially. Oh, he's really emotional. She's a really emotional person, right? Like we say that, and I think a lot of times we just mean like they cry a lot. There are plenty of other emotions out there. So if you wow the audience and you make them laugh, smile, like standing ovations for you. Do not feel like you need to find some angle that leaves the audience in tears.
I have as a speaker, I was a pastor for 13 years, and then I was a school teacher for 4 years before I became an entrepreneur and started running companies. And now I speak on stages and I do stuff like this. But the thing that I've struggled with the most, which is why I'm interested in hearing your talk today and going through this, is that I do struggle with that emotional. I've never been good at that, and I think that's why Erwin, he's also a pastor, of course. I think that's why he got
Yeah.
such a good rousing response, is that he was very good at connecting. And most pastors, good ones, are really good at that. I was never very good, but I didn't do that. But I can tell you that I have right here, I have the notes and the outline of my TED Talk that I'm giving at the end of the month. And I think this one is probably one of the most emotional speeches that I will have ever given. The title of it is "Don't Say Divorce." And I'm telling my personal story, and so it is an emotional thing for me, and I'm interested to see what I can do to make it better.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking about. I'm like, what are you talking about? Like your TED Talk is on a super emotional topic.
So I'm gonna talk about well the backstory on mine specifically is I was on a podcast a year ago, and it was an hour-long business podcast. But a few minutes in the middle of the podcast, the guy asked me about my marriage, because I just celebrated my 27th wedding anniversary, and he was just curious how to 27 years, that's a long time. And I just said, well, one of the keys is we don't say divorce. It's not an option. We burn the ships, blah, blah, blah. Well, that clip has been seen 30 million times. It went insane. And I get text messages, or not text messages, DMs every day. I got two today. People saying, "Oh, I saw your thing about divorce. I love this so much." Like people viscerally against it and for it. And I thought, okay, well, maybe I should talk about this. So I'm going to tell the backstory of that little 51-second clip on Instagram.
I love it so much. And if you have the right, and I don't know your story well enough to recommend exactly what to say, but if you finish with a rousing story of what that's meant, or about a time where maybe someone else might have said divorce, like that'll win. Like that's the standing out.
Yeah, I'm actually what I will be doing at some point during the talk is I'm going to share my personal story of how my wife and I met. We met on a blind date as teenagers, and then the first year of our marriage, we were with some friends who kept joking about divorce. Like, we're saying, well, if you did that, I'd divorce you. And it didn't sit well with me or her or my wife. And we talked about it later that night and made a decision. Like, we're never going to say it. Like, that was a first year of marriage. We made that decision. We've stuck to it for almost 28 years now. And what my plan is to finish my talk with a portion of the vows that we said to one another, which are, I think, are really, really very emotional and touching. Although we said that before the divorce thing, but that's how I'm going to finish. And then I'm going to finish with "Don't say divorce. Don't say divorce."
Yeah, man. You'll get, I can't promise every last person, because there might be a Mike or Jason in the audience that doesn't want to stand, but
we just need you to be there so you can start the standing ovation, right? You can be the I'll just plant. I'm going to say, hey, listen, I'll give you $50. Just when I quit talking, you just got to stand up, start clapping, because everybody's going to follow.
And you got to shoot out of your seat too, right? So everybody sees it. Like, oh, I guess it was that good. Yeah.
Well, so we've got some people that are going to be speaking at this TED Talk, this TED event, this TEDx Wilmington, who are on here live. So we need to help each other out. Don't give a standing ovation. It ain't worth it, because everybody knows when it ain't worth it. But if it's worth it, we need to help each other out. But so anyway, that's my talk, and I'm looking for. I think this will be a more emotional talk than I've ever given. My first TED Talk I did was on the ironic prison of entrepreneurship, and while it was a good talk, it wasn't emotional. So I'm interested to see what you got.
Yeah. That's the ironic thing. I don't know if ironic's the right word, but the thing that feels nerve-wracking to you is what pays off in the standing O.
Yeah.
It's almost like you're getting rewarded for going there.
Yeah. Well, it's going to be.
That's not one of my tips. That's tip 5A.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So let's do it. Let's get back into the slides.
All right, let's go into it. So I'm going to walk through 5 tips. Obviously, there are more than 5 things in the world that can help with the standing O, but these are 5 that I think are practical that you can implement. It'll take some work. You can implement these. These will help out quite a bit. Depending on what your speaking experience is, you might not want to try all 5, but definitely at least 2 or 3. Okay. Tip number 1, I'd like to start off with a story. Through a strange sequence of events, one of my friends from college had his wedding at the property of a major celebrity. And I mean major. I mean, if you're on the internet right now, you know who this guy is. They're doing their guest list. They're like, well, I guess we should invite famous guy, but he's not going to come, right? But he does. He shows. So I was not at this wedding.
And this is at his house, right? This is at famous guy's house.
His, not house, but property.
Okay, gotcha.
Yep. So famous guy shows up. I was not at this wedding. My friend Tim was, and he's like, it was the weirdest thing. It was about 45 minutes after the rehearsal dinner started. Nobody said anything. Just everybody goes silent. And it's like the seas parted. Nobody asked him to give a speech, but it's like the seas parted. He walks to the front of the room. Now, Jason, I don't know what it's like to be a billionaire, but I would think that even with that amount of wealth, if someone were getting married at your property, you would, I don't know, say congratulations. Nope. His speech was entirely about him. It was. He's like, oh, have you walked around the property at all? Have you seen this? Have you tried the wine? We have this imported from here. Have you seen the leather couches? It's entirely about him. And I bring that up because that is the instinct for plenty of people, is that the beginning of your talk should basically be your resume. So it's like, well, hey, everyone, my name is Mark. I live in New York City. I went to Holy Cross. Then I went to Harvard for grad school. I was a consultant for 15 years, started my own business in 2019. And today I'm here to tell you about da-da-da-da. We're gone. We're gone. The beginning of the talk is when you are most likely to have the audience's attention. Here's a secret about TED Talks. The stuff that makes it online has often been edited. So there are a ton of people who start their talks this way, where it's, hey, I'm Jason, and I live in Nashville, and boy, it's great to be in Wilmington. Oh, this was the first state, wasn't it, right? Like it's real easy for you to go down that road. That'll probably get edited out, which is helpful, but it's hurting your confidence, because what's really happening is you're walking on stage and you're saying, I'm insecure. Let me tell you about myself. Let me tell you about my authority. What we should be doing instead, and as hard as this is, what we should be doing instead is pushing the audience into the pool. Let me give you a visual for that. Push your audience into the pool right there, Jason. What I mean by that is when I work with people one-on-one, we obsess about the first line of the talk. First line and last line, we obsess about those things. I mean, sometimes it's an hour-long call to figure out the first sentence. So I'm going to click through some of my favorites. Please note, people do not often come up with these just like this instantly. But picture you're at a TED event or any presentation. The speaker comes out, first thing out of their mouth, they hit the middle, they say, so I was in Antarctica. It's like, whoa, that got my attention.
Yeah.
Person's announced, walks to the middle of the red stage, first line out of their mouth. I became a master at the art of getting kicked out of foster homes. First line out of her mouth, my life changed with one tweet. Ooh, I want to know more about this. Push the audience into the pool. This is the favorite one, my favorite one that I've done. I was pretty proud of this. I can't do this line at every company I go to or anything, but my first line was this. It's a humbling moment when you realize you've turned into an a-hole. Push the audience into the pool. They're like, whoa, what just happened? I am not going to look at my phone anymore. This guy's going to confess that. I don't know if you actually showed up for the call or not, but Art.
I know Art. I know Art. Yeah, hey, well, I don't know if Art's here, but hey, Art.
Art, your first line might be something like this. I know you're supposed to write what you do on your LinkedIn headline, but I decided to write human being. Here's why. Now the audience is in the pool. They're like, whoa, where's he going with this? we need to really think through the beginning of the talk. Most people give away the beginning. TED Talks especially, that's a big violation because you only got 12 or 18 minutes. You can't give away 30 seconds talking about nothing. I did put together, and this is in the Google Doc, I did put together a whole PDF for you to download. Believe me, you want to download this. Like, this is the stuff that I do when I work with people, New York Times bestsellers, all these people. We obsess about the beginning. I go through my whole strategy. It's totally free. I know we all have a million different PDFs and stuff, but you want this one. Go right there. It's blinking for you. See that? That's on purpose. Bestspeech.co. That's my site. The real Jason Duncan. Push the audience into the pool. Yeah. Jason, you ready with your first line? What are you going to say?
Well, I thought I was until a moment ago. Well, I do have my first line, and I thought it was pretty good until right now. So, should I share it, or is that where we're at?
Wait,
Right
it's
now?
not my name is Jason, right?
I was well. I grew up in no. My first line is marriage is hard. Divorce is harder. At least that's what I hear.
I like it.
Well, that's my opening line, and then I'm going to follow up with, in 2 weeks from the day I'm speaking, I'll say in 2 weeks from today, my wife and I will celebrate 28 years of marriage, and I'm going to tell you, and then I immediately transition to why I'm telling this speech about marriage, because this clip went viral, and I actually want to show the clip.
Love it. Yeah, there's something interesting there, and I got married way later in life than you did, and I remember. I do wonder, this is not me telling you what to do. This is me just thinking out loud. I do wonder if you might want to position it slightly differently, which is like, I remember when I was about to get married, everybody I talked to would say something like, marriage is hard. But what they left out is the next line, which is that divorce is harder. So you could say it. That's how I would say it. You and I are different people. That's how I would say it.
Okay. I hear you. I really do. I do know that it takes me a minute and 30 seconds to get through my opening little thing before I hit play on the clip. I've been timing it because you only have 18 minutes.
Yeah,
So I've been timing it. So if I can figure out how to make a more powerful minute and a half before that clip plays, I think that's good. And I want to remind everybody who's watching this, that Google Doc that we've shared with you, I'm in that Google Doc right now on my other screen. And there is a link there that says the how to win audience over the first 5 minutes. When you click on that, you go straight there, and Mike's got all the stuff that you need for this, for fans of the real Jason Duncan and EMS. It's right there. Make sure you go take a look at that Google Doc. And again, if you've got questions as they come up, if maybe you have a first line question, pop that in the chat box, and Garen will pull that over, and maybe Mike can give you an analysis of what that might be. So, all right, Mike.
I love that. That's a good idea. Should do that more often.
Yeah.
Tip number 2 is about the purpose of a speech. If I ask you what's the purpose of a speech, usually when I ask people that question, they're like, to tell people something new, or to inform them, or to provide information. And I would say kind of. From my vantage point, the point of a speech is to move the audience from an old world to a new world. So I think of it this way. It's like you get the beginning of the talk, and by the end, the beginning of the talk, and by the end, I should be showing the audience a better place to be. Like that's my goal, is to show the audience that the world you're in right now is a little bit inferior to the world that you could be living in. Now, there's some things that are tricky about this, but that's the tip. Tip number 2, move your audience from the old world to the new world. The old world to the new world. Here's what's tricky about this one. Your audience might not realize that they're in the old world. The old world is the status quo. The old world is what they're accustomed to. A lot of times we feel like that's fine and good. And like, frankly, sometimes it is. I want to make a comparison for you. Jason and I are both in our 40s, right? So we grew up with
29. I got married when I was 1.
like, I grew up with a Walkman.
Oh yeah.
I remember getting a Walkman.
Oh yeah.
Flip it over. Like, I love that song. I have to flip it over to the other side, fast forward, press play, right? So then eventually this thing came out for CDs, the CD Discman. I thought this was incredible. Like, I don't have to fast forward anymore. No flipping around. I can just go to track 3. Amazing. Remember the whole thing? And then their relative advantage was that there would be anti-skip protection. Like that was a really big deal. I thought that was the best that we could do with music. I vividly remember being on a hike and I was like, man, do you think they'll ever come up with CDs where you don't have to listen to some of the songs? Like that was about the only place I thought we could go. Well, obviously there are better things, right? So Apple comes in and they're like, well, here's the new world for you. And of course, we've adjusted since then. Your speech should be doing the same thing. Whether it's at TED, wherever you're presenting, you should be moving your audience from an old world to a new world. From an old world, that's the world that the audience is in right now, to a new world, which is the world of your idea. So Jason's moving the audience to a world where they don't say divorce. Let me just share some examples of this. This is Susan Cain's TED Talk. I think it's still in the top 10. So she gave this TED Talk that just blew up. It was all about being introverted. So the old world, you can read it if you're looking at the screen. The old world is that basically introverts need to act like extroverts. Extroverts run the world. And she wants to move you to a place where, especially if you're introverted, you realize that, no, you don't need to act like extroverts. You need to lean into your superpowers as an introvert. Here's another example. When Jobs launched the iPhone, the old world was one where, I had a Motorola Razr. I thought that was as good as we could do. A cell phone was for calls, T9 texting. Remember T9, Jason? Like my last name has an A and 2 C's in a row. Those were all the 2 button. I had to demonstrate tremendous patience putting my own name into a phone because it would be like press A, like 2 was A.
And then you had to wait. And you had to wait.
Yeah. Obviously, the iPhone adjusted on that. So Jobs took us from a world of cell phones were for calls and texting to cell phone is for everything now, basically. One more TED Talk example, Simon Sinek. This is one of the most popular ones. A lot of you have seen it, I'm sure. The thought, at least his assessment of the audience, was that people thought that you buy based on features, or people buy based on what the company does. Simon Sinek came in and he said, nope, that's not why. And I want to persuade you that people buy based on why you do things. So if you can do that well on your talk, you're going to be in great shape. Now, here's the thing that is a little counterintuitive. The thing that people usually forget is not the new world. People usually forget the old world. And let me tell you this, the new world is going to feel a lot stronger if you're regularly toggling back and forth to remind the audience of what the old world looks like right now. So like using Jobs as an example, when he was very first launching the iPhone, he said there were smartphones. I didn't have one. But there was like, what were the smartphones at the time?
Blackberries.
Yeah, BlackBerry. Yeah, so he puts a picture of the BlackBerry up there. He's like, we have these things called we have these things called smartphones, but they're really not that smart. They've got these plastic buttons that take up half the screen. So he shows that's the old world. Again, people thought that was cool, but that's the old world. He says, what if you didn't have any plastic buttons? And then he shows you a picture where you can use the whole screen and just scroll. So I'm not saying like the iPhone wouldn't have worked. Like obviously like the iPhone was going to work one way or another, but it's a lot stronger when you're regularly toggling back and forth between old world and new world. And most people won't do that.
I think it's interesting, this old world, new world concept. Part of what my speech is going to be at my TED Talk is I'm showing comments from the comment section on that video, because there were tens of thousands of comments, 300,000 shares and saves. And it was insane. So I'm pulling out just a few. And one of the negative comments is what I would now frame in old world. And I keep referring back to it throughout the speech about how, this guy's comments, like, we need to normalize divorce. If you outgrow each other, or if you find somebody you like better, it was really absolutely a disgusting display of lack of commitment to me, but that's just me. Yeah. But I'm gonna keep referring back to the talk. Yeah. So I'm gonna go back and forth. And so I like that idea of calling it old world, new world. That's interesting.
Yeah. And here's something else. Like, you can do that really quickly. like all that you have to do, Jason, is once you share that comment, you can just repeat it briefly later on. And that's all that's necessary to remind the audience of the old world.
Yeah. Yep, definitely.
So that's really, really strong right there.
Well, hey, before we move into another tip, I want to take just a moment, if I may, to let everybody know about our primary sponsor of the Entrepreneur Master Series, and that is the company Story. It's story.co, STORYY.co. And, we're talking about social media. We're talking about doing videos. That's kind of going to be the crutch of my talk at the TED Talk. And these social media videos, this is how we get known in the world these days. I mean, 30 million people now at least know what my hat and face look like because I was wearing my hat in that video. And it was because his team took a big clip and cut it down to a small clip and pushed it out on the internet, and 30 million people saw it. Story is the company that you need to work with to do that for your content. Story is an amazing company that has a great technology behind them and editors and that can put together your short form video content for social media. And all you have to do is press record. They do the rest. They will tell you what to say. They'll give you the hook. They'll give you everything you need to know. All you do is press record. You do it, and that's it. You upload it in their app. They edit it. They put the on-screen subtitles. They put the hashtags. They write the captions, and they can even post it to your favorite platforms for you. I've been using them for forever. I love these guys. They're awesome. And you can get a free one video edited, and you get a discount if you sign up for their service by using my affiliate link at therealjasonduncan.com/story. That's therealjasonduncan.com/story. And that's story with 2 Y's. Why? Because they're awesome. And thank you to Story, for Connor, the CEO, and for Devin, one of their business development guys, for being our chief and only sponsor of the Entrepreneur Master Series. So thank you. Go check out Story, therealjasonduncan.com/story. All right, Mike. Old world to new world. Now, what else have we got in tips to get a standing ovation?
Yeah, love it. So the next one is actually about your delivery, and it's probably something most people are not expecting me to say, which is that you should speak fast. Fast. Wait a minute, Mike. My whole life, I've been told I speak too fast. Every teacher, slow down. This happens to a lot of people. Okay, when someone tells you that you speak too fast, they actually don't mean that you speak too fast. Let me break it down for you. In regular life, if Jason and I are out having coffee, or I'm having coffee with anybody on this call, or it's not coffee, it's caramels, whatever, we're talking to each other. Regular life, regular conversation, we speak at about 130 to 150 words a minute. If you speak at that rate from stage, it will feel slow. It will feel like you're not prepared. It will feel like you're searching for words. I wanted to study this. So I was like, okay, let me take a look at the most popular TED Talks, the ones that have been shared the most. I figured if they could capture people's attention on video, which is harder than capturing people's attention in the room, that would be a good sign. So I took a look at the top 10 TED Talks. Most popular TED Talks are Ken Robinson, 174 words a minute. By the way, that's particularly relevant because he has to spend a lot of time in that talk waiting for people to stop laughing. It talks about 18 minutes long. People are laughing for about 2 minutes, 30 seconds. Think about that for a minute. If all of a sudden 20% of your talk is people laughing, still 174 words a minute. Amy Cuddy, 179 words a minute. Brene Brown, Brene, like she's from Houston. She's got her like Southern drawl. She's speaking slow, right? She still speaks 160 words a minute. Again, 130 to 150 is normal in regular conversation. Tim Urban. Tim's talk is so funny. 179 words a minute. I think you get the point. We need to talk a little bit faster than we would in regular life. Now, it would be ridiculous to suggest that you should be out there and like trying to count at the same time as you're presenting. But what I mean, I think the best activation for this is just when you're out there and you're presenting, I think a lot of us have a tendency to like look to the audience for acceptance and like, okay, all right, I'll keep talking. I would actually tell you that that voice in the back of your head that's wondering if you're going too fast, go fast. Go fast. But hold on, Mike. Someone told me I speak too fast. Okay, here's a comparison for you. When I ask people this, okay, I'm guessing most of the people on here listen to podcasts. And when I ask people, Okay, at what speed do you listen to a podcast? Say at least half the audience listens faster than 1x, 1.25, 1.5, 2x. Jason, what speed do you use?
My most common speed is 125, but sometimes 15 or 175.
So, y'all, do you think Jason is just like 25, 50, or 75% smarter than who Apple wants to be listening? I mean, maybe. It's actually that we're capable of listening to a lot more words than we think we are. When you've received the feedback that you're talking too fast, it's actually not about the rate at which you speak. People can listen. I mean, I know some people that listen at 3x. The Chipmunks, like, maybe I'm dating myself, but like that Christmas song from the Chipmunks, that's super duper fast. When people say you speak too fast, it's actually not about the rate. It's that you're not giving the audience a break. So I have one friend that sends me text messages that look like this. I'm guessing everybody has someone like that in their life. And if you get a text message that looks like that, you mentally probably check out. So when we say speak fast, when I tell you to speak fast, I'm telling you speak fast, but take a break. Speak fast, but use silence. In other words, pause. There's been some really interesting research done on this. So there's this company called Gong in the Bay Area. They use AI to analyze sales calls, and one of the things they're trying to figure out is what traits make for the best salesperson. So one of the things they've looked at is pausing, and it's super fascinating. Jason, I know you and I both sell high ticket items sometimes, and sometimes you have to say a price that you don't want the person on the other end to feel this way, but internally you're like, oh my gosh, that's a lot of money. So most people, and what the average salespeople do, is when they name a price, after the price, they are willing to stay silent for under 1 second. But what the best salespeople do is they are willing to endure lots of silence. Gong concluded, top sellers pause for 2.1 seconds after stating the price. It signals rock solid confidence in their pricing. Now, I realize TED Talk, you're not selling anything from stage. But here's why I'm bringing this up. When you speak as fast as you can and you don't give a break, it gives off the impression that you're insecure. Someone who is willing to pause, that seems like someone who's in control. That seems like someone who I could throw something at them. They'd be like, oh, that was weird. That's the way that we want to feel on stage. Now, to be clear, like, nobody's giving you a standing O just because of pausing. Nobody's gonna, Jason, oh man, he could only go in 1.1 seconds, but he went 2.1. Yeah, standing up, like, that's not gonna happen. But pausing helps us to make a point rock solid. And especially if it's a point that you want the audience to remember. So speak fast, use silence. I'd like to share a story here. Years ago, I was doing a workshop. It was straight public speaking workshops. It's like 8 people stand in a semicircle. You're supposed to present for 2 or 3 minutes, and that's it. That's the whole assignment. So there's this guy that went, and he was like pretty good. Didn't seem nervous at all. Clean language, never said any of that stuff. But he's just totally monotone. And I'm like, okay, Sean, that was good. Next time you go, I'd love for you to do that again. But we just want to hear a little more like energy in your voice, right? So he goes again, and it just sounds the same. Third time, the same. He's just totally monotone. And so I go to him and I'm like, okay, Sean, let's slow this down. What sentence are you about to say? So he tells me the sentence. I'm like, whatever the most important part of that word, the most important part of that sentence is, I want you to say it louder. So I want you to turn the volume up from like a 5 to a 7. He's like, all right. So he goes, and it sounds the exact same. And now the whole group, just picture the semicircle, the whole group is just trying to get him to sound with more energy. And they're like, yeah, you should yell it. Picture yourself stepping on a Lego. Picture someone cutting you off in traffic. Energy. He just can't get there. So I'm like, okay, let's do this again. We're going to remove work from the equation. Sean, you can say any sentence in the world. What do you want to say? So he goes, I love cookies. I'm like, all right, kind of a random sentence off the top of your head, but sure, I love cookies. Like, so what's the most important word in that sentence? He says cookies. It actually should be love, but let's just go with it. All right, I love cookies. When you get to cookies, I want you to just yell, like, I love cookies. Delivers it the same exact way. I'm like, oh my gosh. All right, Sean, we're gonna do one more. Here's what I'd like you to do. I want you to pause before the word cookies, and then I want you to turn the volume down. So I want you to go from a 5 to like a 3. Because Jason, the thing is, if you pause before a word, everybody's reluctant to do this, but it basically circles the word, highlights the word for the audience. So pausing is a really big win. So I'm like, okay, I love cookies. When you get to cookies, you're going to pause. You're going to say cookies. You're going to turn the volume down. And he goes, I promise this is true. He goes, I love cookies. As if it was a dirty word. So wrong execution, but that's the right idea. Pause before important words, pause at ends of sentences. Pausing is a good thing. It's not a bad thing. And now let's move on to tip number 4, which is, this is the big one. Perfect your stories. Perfect your stories. The most popular TED Talk, Sir Ken Robinson. It is mostly stories. I mean, the most popular ones are ones that are filled with stories. Brian Stevenson tells this awesome story. I've seen several different companies that use the exact same story. They pull that clip from his TED Talk and use that exact story. Susan Cain starts with the story. The introvert one starts with a story. These are things that get used again and again. By some estimates, stories are 22 times more effective than facts. I always find it a little funny to share this slide because this slide is a fact. But point being, stories work. I always tell people stories are the most portable way to communicate an idea. So Jason tells a story, TEDx Wilmington, Jason tells a story, and at least if he's done his job well, people at the end of the day driving home, driving to Allentown, Philadelphia, Maryland, wherever they may have come in from, in the car, man, that one guy who talked about da-da-da-da, it's like they're able to keep that story in their brain. And the next day they go home, they go to church or wherever, tell people about that story. Jason is doing no marketing. Jason is not buying any ads. Someone else is telling the story for him. If I tell a story well, my audience can now go tell it for me. It's free branding. It's free marketing. My friend Joshua has been really, really successful with this. Joshua runs a site called Becoming Minimalist. He has told the same story to begin a speech for over a decade. He has over 1 million readers every single month. Like, people still reading his blog. Like, how many people are still reading blogs? 1 million readers every single month on Becoming Minimalist. YouTube channel gets about 250,000 views, 15 million people each month of social media. He's written several books. It all starts with a story of cleaning out his garage. And I asked him about it because, like, I don't want to be too presumptuous. I'm like, well, like, do you think that helped business like 10%? Like 20? Here's what he said. He says, the garage story allowed people to connect with me on a deeper level. It's laid the foundation for almost every first speech I've given and entirely laid the foundation for the Becoming Minimalist blog and subsequent books. I don't believe there would be a Becoming Minimalist without the connection that story has with people. 4 books, 1 million readers, 220,000 viewers on YouTube every month. Perfected a story. And the great TED Talks do that. It's not hard to tell a story. It's harder to perfect it. It's worth doing that work. I was talking to my friend Clay yesterday. Clay has a TED Talk that came out last year. A little harder for TED Talks to go viral these days. But I was talking to him about this story because he's told it for years. And I was like, well, how many iterations did that take for you to get there? And he said it took him years to realize something. And when he realized it, it unlocked everything for him. And the thing he realized, he tells this talk about just being a total doofus who thought he was cool. And the thing that he realized, so he meets his hero at a conference. He doesn't know he doesn't know what his hero looks like, but it's like picture it, like at a lot of churches they'll do this where it's like, hey, say hello to a neighbor, like that sort of thing. So his neighbor's his hero, Matt Mullenweg, like this big deal coder guy. 25% of the whole internet runs off of Matt Mullenweg's WordPress. Clay meets him and just like totally rambling, totally uncool. Clay realized that story doesn't work unless his introduction, like literally when he is announced, he has to sound like the coolest person in the world so that the contrast to the story coming in makes the story explode even more. So I bring that up not because I want it to take years for your stories to work, but because it's worth putting the effort in to make the stories awesome, not just good. Awesome stories get reshared.
Do you have let me ask you a question, Mike. So as far as the stories go, I've got several stories I'm telling in my talk, and the personal story that I'm telling is how I met my wife. Like I talk about the fact we met on a blind date. We were 15 to 16, and I found myself and I didn't write any of these notes because I know the story, but now that I've practiced my speech probably 7 or 8 times just in the last couple of days, like just out loud timing myself and going through, I can see the story and feel it getting tighter and tighter and tighter, and the visuals are working. Is there a more I guess tactical way of perfecting the story as opposed to what I'm doing, which is just I'm telling it so many times and just making sure I get the details uh, consistent throughout?
Yeah, totally. So I would trust your instincts to a point, and then what I would do is I would tell that story to someone else, someone who will be honest with you, and I would ask them to repeat the story back.
Like
So what can you
repeat it
get?
back, like in like repeat it back like verbatim, or repeat it back in general.
Nope. Present it to Garen and then say, Garen, present this story to me. You just heard it. Present this story.
Okay.
I'm not putting pressure on you, Garen. Choose your person, Garen. But
Well, that's a good idea.
So as an example, I do this whole course on storytelling, like telling a story from stage. I do a whole keynote on it. And one of the big things that people tend to gloss over is the importance of detail. Now, I think the reason why people gloss over it is because bad storytellers also use detail. They just give you too much. So like you can think of a bad storyteller in your life, and that person most likely tells you every last detail involved in the story. So, hey, well, they probably wouldn't say hey, but so they're telling a story. They're like, I remember I was wearing Argyle socks and I was drinking lemonade that day. And I remember the Dodgers were on that night. So they're giving you all those details. So as a listener, you think that those details matter, and they never matter, do they? But the idea of using details is not the wrong idea. It's just that person is giving you every last thing that's going through their head. But like your stories for your TED Talk, I hope that they are rooted in some level of location. I hope that we, at least in one of the stories, I hope that we hear a little bit of like what thoughts were going through your head. I hope that you tell them in the present tense. That's a really strong thing to do. So I know that it happened a long time ago, but if you drop down to present tense, it feels more to the audience like it's happening in the moment. But yeah, the details of, and I don't know, but it's like, I remember I was about to say blank, and then I reached for a cup of coffee and something made me stop. Like now as an audience member, I can picture that whole thing. But it's a tricky dance, right? Because you don't want to, if you reach for the cup of coffee and then we hear that it was a latte, the latte probably doesn't.
Well, as you tell me, or as you're telling us those things, I'm thinking about my story, and yes, all those pieces are part of it, and it's actually a really interesting story that I haven't told publicly. Not that I've tried to hide it. I just hadn't had a need to tell the story publicly about all the details of how I met her and how it started with my best friend and I going to the swimming pool and jumping off the diving boards and meeting girls, and then the meeting in the parking lot with somebody I'd never seen before and what she was wearing, and Now let me ask you this then. So when I'm telling that story, that's one of the main stories. It's the pivotal centerpiece of the story that kind of sets up why we don't say divorce, because that story leads to the next, to the next part of the whole speech. But think about detail and all that kind of stuff, or is it different when you're telling a historical story that's not your own? Well, you know what's interesting about this particular story I'm going to tell, and everybody on Earth has heard this story about the general who told the people that told burn the ships so that they could go in. You are familiar with the concept, right? Everybody's heard a version of that story. Well, one of the comments I make in that viral video is that, hey, we burned the ships. I'm referring to that story without giving context. And so in my speech, I wanted to tell the real story of burn the ships to kind of give some context. And so I went to ChatGPT, my favorite tool in the world that's changing the world right now. And I just said, hey, I need to know the original source of the story about the general who burned the ships. And it's Themistocles at the Battle of Salamis in 480 BC when he was leading the Greek army against the Persians. I didn't know any of that stuff because there's so many versions of that story that everybody tells about when it was and who it was. So I'm telling that story. But
Yeah, well, and just to generalize that, you can, if you make it obvious to the audience that you're making it up, you can give detail. So, like, what jumped to mind when you were telling that story, I remember being in church and uh, our pastor was talking about Jonah in the beginning of the book of Jonah. He's on the run from the Lord, right? And the delivery thing is to be entertained by your own speech. This is probably counter to what most people think they should do. This is probably you've probably been trained out of doing this. I mentioned the Ken Robinson TED Talk like a million times in an hour. I did a deep dive on this once. He's up to over 75 million views, and that's just on TED.com. So probably like 90 or so when you factor in YouTube. That talk is 18 minutes, 30 seconds long. 2.5 minutes of that time he spends waiting for the audience to laugh. They laugh 37 different times. Now here's the interesting thing. 27 of those he laughs with them. Now wait a minute. You're not supposed to laugh at your own jokes. That's interesting. I'm not telling you to laugh at your own jokes. What I'm actually telling you to do is to find the part of your brain that first encountered this story or this concept and was excited about it. Actors call this the illusion of the first time. So find that part of your brain that was like, oh my gosh, this is really exciting. Jason, don't say divorce. The part of your brain that first realized that that was profound to people. By the time you get up there, you'll have rehearsed it 50 different times. It's easy to just like lose the energy for it. But we need to find that part of our brain that was initially so excited about things. Be entertained by your own talk. I often, when I work with people one-on-one, I often find myself telling them to find their inner Jimmy Fallon. Meaning, like Jimmy Fallon, at least when he was on SNL, he was famous for laughing at his own jokes, for smiling, for forgetting what the script was. And when COVID came down, everybody, I remember there were all these headlines that looked like this. Jimmy Fallon's been laughing at his own jokes to prepare for this exact moment, his entire career. I don't want to boil it down to laughter because not every speech is meant to be funny, but you really do. You don't realize it, but when you're presenting, you're coaching the audience on how they should be responding. So I'm going to play a clip right here. There's no sound to it. There's nothing wrong with the clip. There's no sound to it. Because what I'm going to show you is if someone presents like this, you're instantly excited as an audience member. So this is Amy Webb right here. Picture someone walking out like this. I don't know. Are you excited? Like, are you like, I'm going to get something good? When we are presenting our body language, our smile, our laughter, that coaches the audience on how they should feel. This isn't 100% accurate, but for the most part, your audience will mimic whatever emotions you are demonstrating. So if you seem excited, they'll be excited. You're nervous, they're nervous. A lot of people feel like you should come out and say, I feel nervous. No, disaster. That's I get why people do that, right? Because that's like, oh, I really want Jason to succeed. What they're gonna end up doing is like, is he sweating right now? Oh my gosh, he forgot online. Now I'm paying close attention to it. When you're presenting, try to mimic the emotions of the audience that the emotions that the audience should have, or as Gandhi might have said, be the emotion you wish to see in your audience. Fun fact, Gandhi's not actually the one who said that. He just gets credit for it. So here's the thing. You can't do that, though, if the whole time you're worried that you're going to forget a line. You need to walk out there feeling like, this is fun. I'm excited to deliver this part. Jason, I mean, there are probably a decent amount of people who are like, no, divorce is good. I mean, you got to have that part of your brain that's like, I don't believe that divorce is good, and I want to take a stand on it right now. And you demonstrate that emotion to the audience, and you demonstrate why you love your marriage. That moves people. That moves people towards the standing up. So I got one more thing, and I'm going to move from the word tip to the word requirement here, because if you don't do this, then everything else we talked about doesn't matter. And that requirement is this: you need to know, not just think, but know that you deserve to be on that stage. And this is easier for me to say than for you to do. But I always try to give people this comparison. I think for a lot of us, especially put so much work into something, your assumption is they're gonna be like, hey, ladies and gentlemen, the real. Well, they probably won't say the real. Let's just say Jason Duncan, right? And ladies and gentlemen, my first name is Serial. Ladies and gentlemen, Jason Duncan. Your assumption is that you're gonna walk out there, and for 18 straight minutes, people are gonna look like this. They're gonna be looking at you like, oh my gosh, Jason, tell me more. Jason, we love Jason. Maybe. I think you'll get that at parts. Frankly, that's not what audiences look like most of the time. An audience is way more likely to look like this. And when an audience looks like this, if you're like most people, you want to run and hide. I mean, you start saying to yourself, there's a lot of negative talk in your brain. There's a lot of like, oh, they don't like me. Oh, nobody's listening to me. I'm not good at this. I call that feel bad for me. You need to do the work ahead of time to know that you deserve to be out here. When I work with people one-on-one, I was forced them to answer this question. Why are you, Jason Duncan? Why are you, name a person listening to this webinar? Why are you the right person to give this presentation at this time? So when I work with people one-on-one, we literally make a list. And here's the great news. This is actually similar to a Jason Duncan Instagram story from earlier in the week. I think a lot of us feel imposter syndrome, feel like we're not the right person because we feel like we need to be the best. You do not need to be the best. Jason does not need to be the best person and not saying divorce. Jason just needs to be himself, and he needs to be special in what he's saying. It's special to him. I sometimes get nervous for this stuff too. When I present face-to-face, the night before, I would make a list and I read through it several times. The conference where I met Jason, this is my list the night before. Here's why this talk will work. And I really wrote this. I'm like going through and picturing all the different people I've worked with. Because Jason, I was the least known person who was presenting there. I mean, from a straight followers, like Instagram followers perspective, I'm the least known person. So I make people do this when I work with them one-on-one, and man, does it work. Because when you get backstage and you get time to have all these thoughts in your head, a lot of bad thoughts that come out there. This is one of the speakers I work with, my friend Andrea. She runs a website called Better Screen Times. Pretty great stuff. It has helped so many people, and yet she is sitting backstage and she's feeling like, oh, this is no good. I shouldn't do this. Oh my gosh, why are they about to announce me? Well, here's a text message she sent me afterwards. You can see the part that I have circled. She says, dark thoughts started to creep in right before, and I honestly kept telling myself, you're prepared. People are rooting for you. You can do this. And let me tell you something. When you're giving your TED Talk or whatever talk you might be giving, nobody is rooting for it to be bad. I mean, unless you're a politician. Like, there is nobody who is sitting there like, man, I hope Jason messes up. I hope he flubs. I hope Jason's really boring. Nobody's feeling that way. The speaker I'm probably proudest of with this is, I hope this one right, is Isabel Boamike. She gave her first ever speech on a stage last April, main stage TED. I think she was 2 people after Al Gore. Same stage as Elon Musk. First speech she has ever delivered. Lordy, the imposter syndrome should have been there, but she did the work. She felt like she was the right person to deliver the talk. And y'all, like, that's possible for you too. So it would be reasonable for you to wonder, like, well, what now? I want to give you some, I always want to provide value to people afterwards. So repeat something Jason mentioned a while ago. There's a free download. Please download that. If nothing else, how to win over your audience first 5 minutes. If you hit that, you win over the audience pretty quickly. Oh my gosh, the rest of the thing is just smooth sailing. So pretty please download that one right there. And then, Jason, I don't know if you want to do Q&A or what, but I did want to just tell people, because lots of people want to work with me at the end. There are ways to work with me. So QR code thing wasn't working, so we're going to do somewhat old school. You can just put in the subject line the word yes, and I'll write back to you, or you can DM me. But ways to work with me, I do 0 to keynote. So that's helping people go from, it's not literally 0 because it's not like you don't know your own name, but to go from beginning points into a scripted standing ovation worthy talk. And then I do a group cohort as well. I love the group cohort so much. My wife always tells me, she's like, man, well, she doesn't say man, but she always tells me, like, you walk out of there energized, and it's super fun. It's people making an investment into all the things you should know for giving a speech, and you'll be able to give great speeches.
Yeah, it's Mike at MikeTalks.co. Listening, not watching, Mike at MikeTalks.co, or you can DM M as in Mike, PACC, which are the first four letters of his last name, Pacchione. M, a very intimate event. And everybody there maybe not knows each other, but they all know the organizers and they know the people that are just met. And he goes, "Yeah, you're in." And so sometimes it's just meeting the right people. So if you want to get on a TED stage, apply to multiple TEDx organizations. Go through the process. Don't be defeated if you get turned down by one. It doesn't matter. Every organization is different. You can get on stage. You deserve to be on stage. You have a story to tell. You need to go tell it. So, Mike, I don't think anybody's brave enough to share their first lines. At least they're not coming over. Or Garen's not sharing them with me. But marriage is hard, but divorce is even harder. At least that's what I hear. That's what I'm with. But I'm gonna might tweak it just a little bit to make it a little more personal.
Or Jason, maybe lean into the southern part, like y'all. Maybe y'all is your first word.
I don't even say y'all, but I know what you mean. Yeah, I say you guys. I'm crazy that way.
What?
Yeah, I don't say y'all. I heard you say it. You're from Philadelphia. I just heard you say y'all.
I went to school in the South, so I adopted that.
Where did you go? Where did you go to school?
I went to University of Richmond.
Richmond. All right.
Mm-hmm.
Did you always want to be a speech coach? Was that kind of how it was planned, or what?
Man, I got very lucky. I mean, this is a true like God smiling on me moment where the short version is I was teaching a college class. I had a guy who came up to me during a break. He said, "I'm not actually in your class. My girlfriend is. I felt like I would come with her today." Like, okay, that's not what I did with my girlfriends in college. I'm actually in charge of bringing in speakers at Nike. You're an engaging presenter. Would you want to present at Nike sometime? So I'm like, okay, seems like something I should do. And from there, I found out that helping people with speeches is something that you could do. I worked for Duarte in Southern California, or in the Bay Area, for about 8 years, flew all over the world, helping different companies with presentation. That led me to start working with people one-on-one, and I've never looked back. I mean, it's the thing that I feel very best at in the world, and it is like, as best I can tell, it is my calling to help people with speeches.
I love it. Well,
Yeah.
you are good at it, and you do have a good way with it. So we do have a line that just came across. Here's the first line. I'll read it, and you respond. I was adopted, and abortion saved my life.
Whew. Yeah, I mean, it pushes the audience into the pool. You just have to be able to stand tall in that is the thing. Because you can't, like, once you say that, it's hard to go back and make things not serious anymore. So you just need to be willing to stand in that same level for the rest of your talk.
Yeah, that's intriguing. I want to know more about that. Now they're starting to come through. So here we have another one. Somebody says their first line, this person says, "My hook was, I feel like I need a muzzle."
I feel like I need a muzzle. So those are the first words out of your mouth. You hit the center, like that red carpet. You hit the center. You say, "I feel like I need a muzzle. Here's why." I love it. Yeah.
Okay, good. That's a good one. Another one says, "Your English is not good enough. I was told by the director of a music therapy program in the U.S., and I was shocked, and I cried for 7 days straight."
I like it. I do feel like we can play with that a little bit more.
So I happen to know who's saying this, and she's Japanese, if I remember correctly, and she is an English pronunciation coach for Japanese speakers. And so this is very unique. I happen to know Aiko Hemingway, and so that's where this is coming from. So if you saw her and she said that, it might come a little different than the white guy from Nashville saying that.
Well, I think my instinct is that's a great first line, but with that said, I think it hits better if that's maybe 20 or 30 seconds into the talk where we hear about, you said from Japan, right? Coming
Yes.
to the US from Japan, and I assume some things in that were challenging. So hearing a little bit about the journey to come over, all of that to get to the United States where I was going to be entering such and such a program. And I remember sitting down with the director of that program, and it's probably he, I don't know if you said he, but I feel like it was he. I would say something blatant like this, and looked me straight in the eye and said, "Aiko, your English is not good enough." Because that I think would hit stronger if there's a little bit of build up before we get that line.
Okay, good. That's good. I like that. I like that. And I know Aiko for sure because we were in a mastermind together, and she was asking me recently, "How do I get on a TED stage?" And then like a week later, she came back and said, "Hey, I got on the stage." So she got accepted. So again, it just takes putting yourself out there, applying, and you will find one of those TED stages to let you on there. And here's the deal: it doesn't matter if anybody's in the audience or not, because once that thing is YouTubed, it doesn't matter. Nobody's going to be counting heads in the audience because the camera angles typically, unless it's a huge audience, aren't going to show it. So get on a stage, even if there's 3 people sitting out there, you deliver your speech, and you're forever can say you gave a TED talk. It's a phenomenal jumping off point, Mike. I know you've done it. I've done it. Lots of people in here have done it. It's a great thing to do. So well, we're almost out of time, so I think we're going to call it quits here. Mike, I want to say a big thank you to you for being my guest on the Entrepreneur Master Series today. This was a great talk. This is a great topic, and I think what people need to do is go back and watch the replay of this and pick up those tips. Make sure you pick up Mike's free resources that he gave. So, Mike, I've got a few things I'm going to offer to the audience before we leave, but is there anything you want to say before you go off camera and I do all of my housekeeping stuff I got to do before we finish up the webinar today?
Yeah, I want to say one last thing, and I think it's very easy to procrastinate on talks. It's very easy to not rehearse. It's very easy to be like, "Oh, I'll have time for that later." And really, what that's doing is not putting your effort into a talk that could change your life. And by the way, that's not always a TED talk, right? But you might be presenting in front of like your ideal audience, and that's a talk where you can make $100,000 if you did it well. And a lot of times we just procrastinate and we don't do it, or we try to make it too perfect. And so this is the metaphor I always make with people. It's like, when you get in the car and you put in Google Maps and it gives you the estimated time. And if you're like me, I'm like, yeah, we'll see about that Google Maps. I'll get there before 7:03. Yeah, you're telling me 7:03. I'll be there, right? I put so much effort into beating 7:03. I should not be living a life when I'm putting more effort into beating the Google Maps estimated time than I'm working on this big, big speech that could change my life and the trajectory of my company and my career. So my hope is that the tips we've gone through today, you can adopt 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of those, and that changes the course of your speaking career.
Love it. Mike, thank you so much. And for everybody that's here, thank you for attending. If you like this type of content and the info that you get here on Entrepreneur Master Series, there's a whole lot more where this came from. I'm the real Jason Duncan, and I'm a business coach who works with people just like you to help you exit without exiting. As a matter of fact, I wrote a book. It's now a best-selling book called Exit Without Exiting: How to Exit Your Business Without Selling It and Begin Living the Exit Lifestyle Sooner Than You Ever Thought Possible. I'm going to encourage you to go pick up a copy of this at therealjasonduncan.com/book. It tells the stories of 3 different entrepreneurs about how they built and exited their businesses and the pitfalls that they faced by doing so. And it gives you the tips and tricks that I use to exit a multi-million-dollar business without selling it, and how you can do the same thing too. Now, we do these Entrepreneur Master Series webinars every 2 weeks here on Zoom, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, and YouTube. And we've got another one coming up on April the 19th at 3:30 p.m. Central Time on a Wednesday. Let me tell you a little bit about what we've got in store for you on that particular call. The guest expert is Mark Carpenter, and the topic is the secret to get clients to spend more money with you. The secret to get clients to spend more money with you. Mark is a master storyteller, and this actually feeds right into what Mike just told us about perfecting our stories in his 4th tip today. But Mark is a master storyteller who's helped salespeople, entrepreneurs, and executives around the world tell their stories more effectively to close more deals, but also to get current customers to spend more money with them by telling stories. He's the co-author of the best-selling book, Master Storytelling: How to Turn Your Experiences into Stories That Teach, Lead, and Inspire. And he's the co-creator of the Master Storytelling Workshop. He has over 20 years experience in corporate communication and 10 years as an adjunct professor of communication, 15 years of facilitating training. He's an expert in storytelling and business. So Mike just spent some time today telling you how to get